Global Transformation Astrology, GTA, with William Stickevers.
You know, you could look at these charts, right? But what do I see right here? Sun, Pluto conjunction on the ascendant that sets the tone for the entire K-tune period, indicating, right, if you look at this, the Sun Pluto is in a yaw configuration that augurs the process of collective spiritual maturation, requiring humanity to discard old dogmas, old belief systems, right, to restore its relationship with the divine. So, you know, that's basically, right, where we see many of the intractable problems facing our civilization will reach a crisis level, causing great suffering that will deepen humanity and make it question and be more open to a greater understanding of the higher laws of life and the universe. So basically what it's saying is the unfolding of the apocalypse. An apocalypse is a disclosure of knowledge or revelation. In religious and occult concepts, it's usually a disclosure of something hidden, a vision of heavenly secrets that can make sense of earthly realities, for instance. So we could see, right, we have an unfolding apocalypse, and that correlates very interestingly closely with what we've seen with the planetary cyclic index, right? This is 2012 right here, 2012, and look, right? So the global crisis correlates very closely to when the planetary cyclic index hit its peak, and then we go down, then it made this precipitous drop going into this period here that we're now hitting this trough point. So this is the chasm. This is the chasm. So everyone thinks, well, once it hits some, look, a lot of astrologers, they think, oh, we hit the bottom, right? The next day we're back to normal, back to 2019, back to extend and pretend, right? That's not true at all. You got to look at it from this period here. Look at World War II. It was this period here. Look at this, right? It's this period here. Look at the Cold War. Look what happened in the 80s, right? Look what happened here, right? Okay, so we're in it. That's 2012. Now, what happens, right? We have 2012 begins, and then what happens? Boom, drastic geopolitical revolution occurs. We have the UK choose British exit, right? They voted to leave the European Union, and then it was followed up and topped with Trump winning the presidency. So that basically caused a radical, dramatic, unexpected surprise for the global political and financial establishment. British exit and Trump each presented opportunities that the deep state and the elite didn't seem obvious. It didn't seem that this was going to happen. Even the astrological community was a complete shock, right, that this happened. And we knew, right, I knew pretty much it was going to happen back. I knew something big was going to come, right? Obviously, starting 2015 onward as we got into the US election. And as soon as we see UK British exit, this correlated perfectly with what we've been talking about, the fourth turning for the United States, right? Every time we have a major war, major crisis, major turning, correlates with a major planetary alignment happening to the US chart. And this period, 2022 to 2027, that being the Pluto return, right? And the Uranus return, right? The actual third Uranus return during this fourth turning period. So basically Trump and British exit was the trigger, the secular trigger that correlated with this crisis that we're now in, that correlates very closely with this global crisis that we're in, that was basically correlating with this cartoon period. That was the first period that was set off by the Mayan calendar end date. So the Mayan calendar end date should really be reworded as the Mayan calendar start date, the start of the global transformation and the global crisis, which is really the transformation. Look, if you look at it this way, the global crisis correlates very closely to the timeline of this K-tune. Okay, so now you see the connection now? We'll get to UFOs in a second. So what happens is geopolitical historian, and this is on April 2017, geopolitical historian and author of UFOs in a National Security State, Richard Dolan, went on Coast to Coast, again, the largest radio show of its kind in the world, and stated, quote, any situation where there could be a disclosure of the UFO ET reality is going to include a new future in terms of the technology we're dealing with, right? So he basically believed we're going to see a rapidly transforming world going forward. And he's pointed out that people in charge of keeping the secret about UFOs are not the only factor anymore. It's possible, and this is him, quote, President Donald Trump could play a role in disclosure. Quote, we have a president really for the first time in all modern history who's not on board with the mainstream reality. Dolan suggested, noting Trump's war with the intelligence community and affinity with Alex Jones, he believes Trump could force the disclosure issue, right? Now, that was something he said on that show. Sure enough, what happens within months after Trump becoming president on December 16th, 2017 at 9:12 a.m. EST, the ATIP program disclosure in the New York Times video, right, is put out to the public, right? And I'm just going to play it here for those of you who are maybe not aware of that.
Dude, there's a on, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's like another thing, it's rotating.
Okay, so I'm sure we all remember that one. Then what shortly follows is this. This is worth listening to here. I won't play the whole segment, but I want to play the intro. So what happens following that is Paul Hellyer, former Canadian Defense Minister, the man responsible for unifying the Canadian Air Force, Army, and Navy into one unit, right? He comes out and he goes on Russia TV, and he then basically spills the beans. Okay, so you can see how everything is blowing up here, right? Trump orders the creation of the U.S. Space Force, right? This happens on December 20th, 2019. Very interesting. What do we see here? Saturn, Pluto conjunction forming, right? At that time. So this is 8:06 a.m. when it becomes operational, right? I'm not going to go into that, but that's part of it. And former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, warns UAPs displayed in that video, that technology, right? The U.S. military does not have. So basically saying that the UAP phenomenon, right, that displayed from, that video footage from the U.S. Navy essentially is a technology that the United States does not have and could not defend against. So he basically underscored the importance for getting this information out there. Now, going back to the astrology, we could see, right, that the 8 Ahu Ketun midpoint date happens to be October 30th, 2022. So if we take the date from the time of the Mayan calendar end date to the, right, until 2032, September 8, 2032, the midpoint date happens to be right here at the nadir of the planetary cyclic index. As we can see, Pluto is right here at 26 Capricorn 14, very close to the U.S. Pluto return. If you look at the Barbo planetary cyclic index nadir, that's on December 2022, very close. So very close in time, right? This K2 midpoint, right? October 30th, not too far off, within a couple of months, or actually a month, right? A little bit over 30 days, we see the nadir happening on December 1st. And within that period as well, we have the third of 3 final U.S. Pluto returns, right? So we're seeing, do you see the correlation now? Right? You have the Mayan long count right? K-tune midpoint date, the Barbell Planetary Cyclic Index nadir date, and the U.S. Pluto return, final return end date, December 28th, 2022. All happening, coming to a theater near you this fall. Now, we talked about the U.S. Pluto return in terms of empire, but what it could mean in context with what we're discussing today has to do with the unfathomable, right? The difficult or impossible to understand, the incomprehensible, something that is essentially impossible to fathom or comprehend, incomprehensible, deep, profound, immense, immeasurable, not explainable by laws of physics, significantly large in size, impressive and imposing in appearance, style, right? Impossible to see or clearly distinguish, unintelligible, not able to be cognitively understood, so overwhelming in power. And it also would correlate, more importantly, with ontological shock. Ontological shock, the state of being forced to question one's world view, to change your thoughts and your views of everything that you believe in, to think in a completely different way of all things, to realize that what you have been taught is not what is really so, to experience a deep crisis and undergo the psychological task of reconstructing a new set of values and beliefs according to a radically different worldview. So when the underlying model of reality changes, so it has a transcendent factor to it. And what could cause ontological shock on a global scale, right? Dealing with the unfathomable, more so than with, right, very much connected with what we see here with the Pluto return, the K-tune midpoint, along with the Barbell Planetary Cyclic Index trough date. So what we're looking at here is the potential for ontological shock dealing with the unfathomable, or information or an experience that is unfathomable for the collective, right? And so this would correlate very well. I'm going to finish it here, and then we're going to go into next time into the actual components of what would create ontological shock. In other words, if we have an alien civilization, why and why now? Why and why now? Why is, if there's going to be a disclosure event, or if the aliens are going to force this disclosure event, or something is going to eventually give within the deep state or the government, or we go through a period of global revolution, why and why now? And we'll talk about that when we deal with actual alien civilizations, who they can be, what they are, and why they are probably more concerned now with the transition that is now underway with humanity, that's going to rapidly move us from a type 0 to a type 1 civilization.
To watch the full presentation and more like this on geopolitics, the economy, and world events from an archetypal and mundane astrological perspective, join the Global Transformation Astrology membership. Go to gta.williamstickevers.com. Become a GTA member today.